Well, let's teach number concepts. Count different objects. Adding and subtracting, teach it with different objects. Fractions, we can start with cutting up a piece of fruit so they even understand that it's part of something. And then you can go on to something more abstract like number lines. But make it concrete to start with. All right, let's teach a position word. Well, one parent said to me, whenever I say the word put the, he throws it in the garbage. Well, because when he first heard it, it was put the, whatever it was in the garbage. Well, to avoid that kind of problem, let's say for the word down, let's use a lot of different examples. You walk down the stairs. The plane went down and landed. You put a cup down. I laid down on the bed. I walked down a hill. See, then they'll start to get the concept. And when it comes to things, I can tell you, diagramming a sentence never made any sense to me. Let's start out with nouns. And then let's go to what I call the position words. Toy airplanes are great for this. They can go over something, fly beside something, they can fly under something. Now the thing some other brain scan stuff, I found I was more interested in looking at pictures of things than pictures of people. But we gotta have people in this world interested in things. I mean, Tesla, who invented the power plant, would be labeled autistic today. Okay. Social interaction through shared interests. Things like FFA, that is a youth agriculture program in the States, 4-H, I think you have that here. Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, maker community groups. These are things where, people get together and do cool stuff, like make things with 3D printers. You want something cool? 3D printer, is that something really cool? Price of one football uniform. I think one of the things that's happening at home, we got way too much emphasis on sports. Let's get involved with these shared interests. And don't do something like, the kid's bad in math, so we take him out of band for extra math tutoring. Don't do that. Band is the only thing that he wants to go to school for. If I hadn't had art and sewing in elementary school, I would have gone nowhere. Okay, you got a problem. Is it a biology problem or is it behavioral? If it's biology, it could be sensory oversensitivity. That's why he's screaming. Maybe the nonverbal person has a hidden painful medical problem. Can't process rapid information. If it's behavioral, is it frustrated because he can't communicate? Is he doing it to get attention? Yeah, I did that. Get out of doing something? Yeah, blow a fit to get out of French class? Yeah, did that. Now, here are some things where I think it's important maybe to do some accommodations. There's some kids that when we do the fire drill, you've just got to take them out beforehand. The child is just throwing a fit in the supermarket every time. I still can't tolerate scratchy clothes. And the thing is, I find that some cotton pants itch and others don't. And I don't know why. Handwriting, let them type. The fluorescent light thing, that's a big one, but it doesn't affect everybody with autism. Only maybe 10%, but that 10% is really bad. Problems with multitasking, that tends to be universal, and problems with remembering long strings of information. All right, here's an example of bad accommodations that I think can cause a handicap mentality. You got a shy boy in grade school who's allowed to do public speaking on Skype. No. The kid is allowed to stay in his room all day. This is where a line was drawn in the sand with me. That was not allowed. I wasn't allowed to become a recluse in my room. I'm seeing too many smart kids getting so addicted to video games, they're not doing anything else. We need to limit that to 1 hour a day. Another case was a teenage girl, honors student, late teens, had never gone grocery shopping by herself. I'm not talking about stuff that's expensive to do here. This is just overprotecting them. Okay, this is where the old-fashioned 50s upbringing helped me. Turn-taking and conversation and activities, board games, sit-down meals, being on time. Yes, I had to sit through church even though it was boring. You've got to learn, sometimes you got to do some stuff you don't really want to do. Saying please and thank you. And when there were social mistakes, they didn't scream no, they gave the correction. Like, let's say I spat on the sidewalk. And I'd say, well, spitting on the sidewalk's rude, don't do it. They would say that rather than screaming, no. Here's bad behavior that was not tolerated in the 50s for any child. Being rude, bad tail manners. This is the big one. Mom and the teacher worked together as a team. The rules were the same at home and school. And if I had a problem, Mrs. Deach would call my mother, and I'd get home from school, and mother would say, well, Mrs. Deach called today, and you were on the floor kicking and screaming, so there'll be no TV tonight. I'd take that away for one night. Being a slob. It's okay to be eccentric, but not a slob. And then swearing, in our house, shut up was a swear word. That was strict. These are the things we got to get. I hate to be harping on such basics, but I'm seeing too many kids where they don't know how to shake hands. You've got to just demonstrate to them. You've got to teach them like they're being in a foreign country. Eye contact. I'm seeing too many kids don't know how to order food in restaurants. This is ridiculous. Going in stores and buying stuff. Just the most basic stuff. And you cannot do this with a fake store at school. You got to go to real stores. And if you're on a budget, well, then you go into McDonald's, you buy things, they can buy a dollar menu. You know, this can be done even if people are really on a budget. Okay, another bad thing, kids are just not getting together, 3 or 4 kids, and figure out a game. I think there's a time when you take this electronic stuff away and get kids socializing where they make up their own game. I'm not suggesting that they totally be deprived of electronics, but I think we need to have some time free of this stuff. Because when you grow up, the negotiations you do in these games, it's called work groups when you grow up. It's a skill a lot of people need to learn. Okay, these are cool dudes. They are the people that put the Mars rover on Mars. You got the Mohawk guy, an Elvis guy, and you got an old hippie that's my age. And they're eccentric. They went to geek heaven. But what worries me is I'm seeing a kid getting a label that maybe ought to work at a cool place like putting the Mars rover on Mars, not going there. Also, these feed yards out here need people that are good with cattle, and you've got beautiful feed yards here. And I went out to feed yard, and I got back to the hotel, I didn't even smell. I couldn't believe it. The other thing is, it's okay to be eccentric. I dress eccentric. Don't try to de-geek the geek. You can't make me into something I'm not. But you can't be a filthy, dirty, rude slob. And when the space shuttle was shut down, the engineers were crying. Now, this is a rule system I still use. Take all the rules of the world, the society, and I put them in these 4 categories. Really bad things. Killing people, burning up everything, and wrecking everything, stealing everything. You won't have a civilized society if you have that. Then you have courtesy rules. They help people get along. Then you got the illegals, but not bad. You know, like somebody figuring out how to get out of taking algebra or something like that. You know, that's an illegal, but not bad. Then you've got sins of the system. And they are very society-specific. And they have draconian penalties. I mean draconian. Some countries you are allowed to criticize the president. Other countries you are not allowed to do that. That's the kind of stuff that's sent out of the system, and boy, you don't mess with the sins of the system. Okay, you got a nonverbal person? Let's go through the list of hidden painful medical problems. Acid reflux, big number 1. Tummy hurts? Let's try a little acid reflux medicine. Constipation, urinary tract infections. I mean, these are simple things. Yeast infections, boy, had that, really miserable. Ear infections, a bad tooth. There's my squeezing machine. When I got into puberty, I started having horrendous anxiety attacks. As I went through my 20s, it got worse and worse. And I found the squeezing machine helped to calm me down. Exercise also helped calm me down. And then when I got in my early 30s, I went on antidepressant medication. A little bit of antidepressants can sometimes really help with anxiety. There's way too many drugs given out to little kids like candy. Way, way, way too much. But there's a place sometimes for careful, conservative use of medication. And my Way I See It book, you know, it's got a lot of information on that. And my Thinking in Pictures book describes my experiences with taking the medication, and I was a believer in biochemistry. I mean, it worked. Well, and brain scanning showed that my fear center is 3 times larger. That might explain why the antidepressants work. But when you use antidepressants for anxiety, this is stuff like Prozac, Zoloft, Lexapro. I'll use the generic names here. Maybe you have fluoxetine, sertraline, so the generic names for these drugs. You want to use much lower doses, because when you're treating anxiety, if you give the regular label doses used for treating depression, you may get agitation and insomnia. And that's a gigantic mistake, gets made all the time. Oh, he was wonderful. At a low dose, we double the dose, and it was horrible. And then they make the mistake of treating that with tranquilizers. No, what you do is back off on the dose. There's a rear view of the squeezing machine. There's a therapist there just using some pressure. Sometimes doing some sensory things can help with the ABA. Kind of calm the sensory system down. It's sort of like taking your mobile phone outside to get a good signal, and you do some of these sensory things, the kid might hear better. Or maybe try slow swinging. That works for some. These things are very variable. Works on one, doesn't work on another. But you're talking about simple stuff here. It's not complicated stuff. And this little kid's got a weighted vest. Yeah, helps some kids, doesn't work for others. They're easy to make. Okay, I think it's important to get these little kids so they're going to enjoy being held and touched. This is one of the easiest ones to desensitize. Remember, firm pressure's calming, tickle touches. Ooh, no tickle touches. We got to prepare for employment. 12, 13 years old, we need to be finding paper route substitutes. I had a fantastic science teacher who got me interested in science. There's all kinds of retired people around. I'm sure I'd be happy to work with some teenage kid, get him interested in fixing cars. It doesn't matter if it's carburetors, and I know cars don't have carburetors anymore. I know that. It doesn't matter if it's something ancient. What you're doing is getting them turned on. That working on an engine is neat. Take kids out to visit places. Okay, we got feed yards at home. We got oil wells. Are we supposed to take 12-year-olds to oil wells? No. But that might be something you do very, very carefully on a Sunday afternoon after you've made friends with the guys there, and you only let him go in the control room, no other place. That's the kind of stuff that, get them interested. And then he said, well, you have to be, 18, but, you can work towards this. But if you don't show it to them, they don't get turned on. See, this is where I want to get kids fixated on stuff they can turn into lifelong careers. Bring trade journals. Every business has trade journals. I mean, Cattle's got a lot of them. And people respect ability. People thought I was a weird geek, but when I showed off my drawings, I got respect. And when I was in high school and I wasn't doing very much studying, I sure made our Skeeto house look nice. And this brings up doing tasks that other people appreciate. Now, I did not decorate it with Star Trek. That would not have been appreciated. Here are great jobs for middle school kids. Just set it up for the neighbors to walk some dogs. How about fixing computers for some local businesses? And the kids got to go around and run the virus programs. How about making PowerPoints for people? Selling artwork, running the church website. If you have farmers markets, you might have that down in Sydney, they could work on that. Just figure out informal things that they can do. These kids have got to start learning how to work. Get them into things like, robotics clubs, 3D printer clubs, things like this. Now, the thing I like about robotics is it's got to do an assigned task. You got to use your creativity to make it do something that somebody else assigns to you. I'll always like to show my drawings off. Oh, that one came up much better. And this is one of my facilities done in SketchUp. SketchUp is a free 3D design program. There's cool stuff on the internet, but you gotta have a decent internet connection. Boy, I was out on the feed yard, they had a horrible internet connection. Because to do some of the really great things, you've got to have a good internet connection.